Okay, so we'll get started, I think. Warmest welcomes to everyone who's joined us for this session today, a virtual ribbon cutting for our graduate showcase for MA Design for Social Innovation and Sustainable Futures. Thank you so much for being with us. Hopefully the exhibition will expose you or introduce you to a group of students who've been working tirelessly over the past 15 months on both finding and defining their identity as socially and environmentally thoughtful and compassionate designers. So first, I just wanted to introduce the students. If you could turn your videos and say hi. Let's see you all. Beautiful. Hi everyone. In your weird and wonderful worlds. Yeah, we've got a group of 20 students who started with us in October 2019, and today's session you're going to hear from some of them as they talk about the thematics of their work and talk a bit about their experience on the MA. So please, participants, feel free to put comments on the chat as the session evolves. It would be lovely to hear from you. And equally, if you've got questions, we're hoping to save some time at the end. So if you've got questions, pop them on the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and we'll hopefully be able to have some questions at the end too. So I'm going to share my screen again and just share with you a couple of pictures from our student group this year. Hang on one second. Oh, sorry, we lost. Sorry, can we see that? Okay. Give me a thumbs up or something. Is that okay? Perfect, lovely. So yeah, as I said, since October 2019, this group of students have been working with us on a new MA, on a very, very generative MA, and the students have taken a more than active role really in shaping the experience of this course and shaping its curriculum. And as you can see here, the good old days when we were allowed to touch each other. They've done an enormous amount of work, both inside and outside of the university, on engaging with social practice, environmentally conscious practice, and thinking about who they are as designers in this enormously complicated world that we find ourselves in. Since March 2020, yeah, this group of humans has faced unprecedented and in many ways life-changing challenges, like the vast majority of the world. Obviously, no one starts an MA thinking that they'll be engaging with it entirely on screen and within the sort of time capsule-like interiors of their childhood bedrooms. There, our only contact, and this goes for everyone, right? Our only contact with the outside world was often peering out of our bedroom windows, which was the concept that drove the students towards the design of this exhibition. It's been a tough year, I think, but the students kept going in so many ways, sharing practice together, sharing learning together. You can see here a lino cutting tutorial happening online and a seaweed material making tutorial happening online. We've had a really up and down, emotional, vulnerable experience together over the past few months, but I guess I was really keen in this exhibition to give the students that space to sort of talk about that and to reflect on that, but also draw reference to the overwhelming amount of hope and care for each other that the students have shown over these last few months. And in truth, when we think about it together, the ethos of this course has never really felt more relevant than it does now, which, the ethos of the course is one of deep authenticity and care, where we bring ourselves fully to the work that we make and do. It's one of activism in all of its kind of shapes and volumes and sizes, where we live and work in pursuit of justice. It's one of true connection with the natural world, where we don't desire to dominate, but we really desire to listen and to learn. And it's one of plurality, where we challenge the dominant narrative of this world that we inhabit, and we actively seek more plural and collective knowledges. So these insatiable and remarkably robust students have got to the end of this MA, and in many ways it's just the beginning really for all of them. And they've created this exhibition as an invitation to all of you to peek out of their windows and to gently peek into some possible futures, and explore the kind of work, the promise, the possibility of what tomorrow might look like. So you're going to hear now from 3 of our students who are going to talk to the 3 thematics of our exhibition, those being care, community and learning. So you're going to hear from Benoli, Rebecca and Kate. And you'll also hear a little bit from Anna Schlim, who's my co-pilot on this course with me. And once you have a chance to look at the showcase at your leisure, you'll see how the collective of the 20 students' work kind of come together in this united sense of what's the world that we desire to live in, and what's the world that we desire to connect with between everyone. So I'm going to hand over now to Benoli, who's going to talk a little bit about her practices in care.
Thank you, Ella, for the introduction. That was super nice. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah, so I kind of just wanted to start with what does care mean, because I feel like it's such an abstract concept. And of course, we always start with a dictionary definition. So it's to mean, it means to protect someone or something and provide the things that person or thing needs. But I think throughout this project and like throughout this year, I've kind of been forming my own definition of care. And it's kind of been it's like everyday acts of kindness that we have, as simple as fetching someone a glass of water, or like, like a mother making milk for her son or her daughter. But it's also to kind of see and pay attention and kind of act, which has been the core of my project for my final major project. And so my project's called Take Up Space. And I kind of started back in July in India with my mom, and we were kind of having this conversation of, we were in isolation for 5 months, and it was driving me crazy, but she said it was very normal for her. And that kind of like started my investigation into why is it normal for her, and kind of what does prolonged isolation, what effects do prolonged isolation have on women? And like the most important question that I was kind of trying to address what is the impact of caring on carers? And what kind of started as a journey of isolation opened up a host of other things and other problems, wider issues of gender roles and patriarchy, but also kind of unpaid care work, and what effects do that have on women? But the key insights that were derived were kind of lack of self-love and lack of purpose, this constant strive for perfection, and a loss of independence, all kind of tied up to this idea of unpaid care work. I'm sorry, this is probably better. So from there, I kind of came to this key question of how might we kind of connect women together to build their self-efficacy and help them kind of find their abilities and talents. Because a lot of times I was working with homemakers around the age of 40 and 50 in India, but also I was working here with Tara on the same demographic in the UK, but Indian immigrants. And we kind of came to the conclusion that a lot of women felt that their caring wasn't valued enough. So from there on, the intervention was kind of a community, with an online community that connects women in India and the UK together. And we met every weekend for 6 weeks, Saturday and Sunday, and we kind of exchanged skills and conversations. And topics kind of ranged from arranged marriages to like talking about someone's career and antibiotics. And also we were kind of dancing somewhere in between. So everybody was just kind of showing their talents and what they kind of wanted to talk about, which was super, super nice. But in terms of impact, I think towards the end, it did kind of create self-efficacy and connection in women. But more than anything, I think it kind of brought tech literacy in people, especially older women, and also kind of improved interpersonal relationships. But I think more than anything, it kind of brought a lot of people together, mothers and daughters who ordinarily wouldn't have the time to talk to each other. So it was kind of a platform to be heard, to share things, and where you were technically allowed to fail, because in life, we're not allowed to fail as much, or it's not kind of looked up to. And I kind of just wanted to end with this question of who kind of provides care to you, and to reflect on who does that, and who do you provide care to? Who are you kind of listening to, and who are you not, and why? And who are you seeing, and who are you not, and also why? But I think more than anything, it's very important to know that just by listening, you can create a difference in someone's life. And yeah, I just wanted to leave you guys with this thought. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Benali. It's so beautiful. And as Joey rightly says in the chat, you've brought happiness to a lot of women through this project. And thank you so much for sharing. To Rebecca, who's going to talk a little bit about the thematic of community.
Sure. Okay, so can everybody see this? Okay. So this is also my first thought was, what is the dictionary definition of community? And it says a group of people living in the same space or having a particular characteristic in common. So that was my initial understanding of community as well. It was something that was hyper local, and a concept that might be just a close knit of family and neighbors, as seen on the picture of Korean women making kimchi on the right side of the screen. And the basis of empathy and the collective bonding is still, I think, very crucial and still worth practicing, as seen on the left picture of me helping out a farmer in exchange for their knowledge and insights in agriculture and cooking. And then I interviewed Buddhist monks, amongst other food anthropologists, street vendors, and other farmers. And one of them was Chung Kwan, and she's a renowned cook on Chef's Table on Netflix. And she shared her food philosophy of growing the produce as a part of cooking and eating it, and how understanding the organism itself was the only way to truly consume it. And her belief that humans were a form of fermentation, and how we live amongst microorganisms, showed the deep understanding of the circular nature of food. And it kind of pushed my understanding of community from this kind of a anthropocentric idea. And then I also had plenty of inspiration from daily food interactions I've had, such as vegan sushi rolls that my mom makes with stir-fried kimchi, or the pumpkin leaves that we use to hold our food, which we consume as a wrap, and the drying of veg to preserve them, or how we support carbon sequestration by consuming seaweed products. And then I took these amazing insights and shared them with friends all over the world, which turned into a global community who loved to cook Korean food, who loved to eat better for the planet. And I turned these recipes into a cookbook, which I put it up on a website. So, and I think the impact that came out of it was very hard to measure because it was so qualitative. But this is an email that I got from one of the participants who live in Toronto. We have no prior relations at all. And this review just truly made my day. And the fact that she messed this recipe up, but she decided to just keep going and let it ferment and keep the faith in kimchi. And it turned out amazing. And she said it was a happy accident. And she thanked me for sharing this recipe. And I think this is the biggest impact that I could have, even if it's just one person, switching that one mindset, that it is worth saving and it is worth trying and it is worth to open up minds and palettes. So yeah, now I understand building a community as fully understanding the interconnectivity of all the intricacies of class, race, power, and money, and to bring individuals to connect and empathize as a group. And my research on the history of globalization and industrialization and feudalism and colonialism throughout the whole MA had made me see the current food system as a product of capitalism and power dynamics as it is. It was just a really big understanding of the big picture. And understanding that anthropology through food really highlighted the social and environmental issues that we have, such as food waste, food insecurity, and more. So I believe that the future of community hopefully looks more resilient and relying on local and seasonal food, as well as respecting and appreciating for different cultural cuisines and seeing it without bias. And I hope that opening people's minds through their palettes can bring farmers and consumers closer together and strengthen the supply chain, and bring more transparency, accountability, and throughout the whole supply chain. So yeah, that's it. And if you'd like to know more about the project, I'm also holding a workshop this Saturday at 2:30, and feel free to join me to learn more about this topic. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rebecca. It's certainly one of the things I miss the most about spending time with you all is you and PP bringing in the most amazing food into the room. Sharing food is going to be something that I long for after all of this is over. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Amazing work. Over to you, Kate, to talk a little bit about the thematic of learning.
Can you see me and my screen? Okay, Ella is nodding, so I'll begin. So my name is Katarzyna. I'm proud to represent the third theme of our project, which is learning. Let me fix this presentation. Oh, this is how you do it. Okay, so I believe learning is one of the most crucial processes in our lives. Everything we have to learn. You might not remember it, but putting a shirt used to be a challenge when you were little. So you had to learn it. You had to learn how to ride a bike or use a stove or to say you're sorry. And a crucial part of learning happens at schools. Education is a process that is meant to develop our talents, abilities we are born with, and yet it focuses on academic ability, which is confused with intelligence. This led to the belief that testing and examinations are a viable way to measure intelligence. Schools prioritize the subjects that are most relevant to the economy, so sciences and technology, and favor those who do well on tests, especially in those subjects. Throughout the education process, children become frightened of being wrong. They start to perceive each mistake as a failure, consequently limiting their opportunities to learn. And bad grades make pupils feel not capable, when in fact they might be perfectly capable in different ways. There's just no space to show it in the system. Yet solving logarithmic equations might not exactly be the most relevant skills to every pupil's life. Children today are born into a world in which they will face economic, environmental, and social challenges that the existing systems provide them with will not be enough to solve. One of the key capacities to meet those challenges in life lies within creativity. Yet schools do not see as equal part of education. Moreover, teachers lack tools and methods of developing children's creativity, and also they lack belief in their own creativity. So develops teachers' creative confidence and provides them with skills, tools, and methods they could use to develop children's creativity and problem-solving skills, as well as to address issues that they face in the education system. It is a program that offers remote design thinking workshops to Polish primary and secondary school teachers. During each workshop, teachers solve a concrete challenge within education, learn design thinking methodology, and find out how to use it in design thinking and everyday life in schools to solve problems. After finishing the workshop, each participant receives the program's complete ready-made design thinking workshop toolkits and run the same workshop for the next teachers. So what you can see now on the screen are the boards, like filled toolkits after the workshops. From 9 of the workshops that I have held, there have been 43 teachers on those, and all of them successfully arrived on the other side, came up with a solution to a challenge within education system that they face, and felt a positive change. My evaluation already revealed that their self-efficacy increased after the workshop and remained higher even a month after the workshop. So this is just simply amazing. And their feedback was more than positive. They already started to implement those tools that they've learned. So by using the toolkit and then teaching this method to other teachers, which is the idea that the project is based on, this brings a cascade effect that popularizes design thinking within Polish schools. But enough about this now. If you want to listen more, I will be hosting a session about this and the future of learning tomorrow with Joey and Chin. So feel free to comment at the same time, and we'll post the link in the chat. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kate. It's fabulous to see how it's all come together. The Polish education system is lucky to have you. We've definitely missed you this year, an enormous amount. I'm going to hand over now to Anna Schlim, who is the sort of co-lead of this course with me, and someone that sort of came halfway through the sort of experience of lockdown. So Anna, over to you just to talk a little bit about your perspectives on the course.
Hey, first of all, it was so nice to hear everyone talk about their projects. And yeah, I was thinking about the themes that you worked under, that you ended up kind of finding in your work together, the care, community, and learning. And I kind of think that there's really no better 3 kind of groupings to represent this course in a lot of ways, because I feel like we really try to live the culture that we believe in as a community of practitioners, and we put a lot of care into the community and into our work. And I think, Ella kind of asked me to talk about why I think this course is relevant right now. And I think it's, as everyone has probably realized over the last year more than ever, there isn't really a blueprint for the future or for what we're doing at any given moment. And I think this course kind of acknowledges that and puts that into the way we teach, the way we function as a community. So we're constantly challenging the existing models, trying to question things and do that in a generative way. So we're not discarding things, but we're actively trying to make them fit for a better future, I think. And another thing that's just so striking is how diverse our groups of students are, and even just now seeing all this like rich cultural background that you all brought into your projects and how much that has shaped what you did. And I think that is so exciting because, I mean, it's in the title, we're talking about sustainable futures, not future. And I think that's another thing that we're really passionate about, and is really one of the core things that both Ella and I kind of believe in this course, is that we need multiple plural futures in order to imagine our way out of the situation we're in right now. And I think we're doing that in a lot of different ways. We're focusing a lot on collaboration, on co-creation, and essentially, I think working towards justice in whatever little slice of the world we're focusing on. And also, I think focus back on things like care and craft and maintenance that might not seem so sexy at first, like what a lot of the design world has been focusing on due to the kind of economic system we find ourselves in. And yeah, I feel like each one of you has kind of started with transforming themselves in order to see that change in the world. And I think, that's kind of what this course is all about. And hopefully with time, we'll also radiate outwards and multiply. So yeah, I think that's kind of why I think this course is relevant.
Thank you so much, Anna. Let's radiate, let's multiply. Let's go. Yeah, beautifully put, as always. We've got plenty of time for questions from the audience as well, so please do pop your comments on the chat or ask questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We'd love to hear your questions, and we've got the students here today to respond. I'm going to kick off some questions. Firstly, just to introduce the students we've got obviously Rebecca with us, Benoli with us, and Kate with us. We've also got Miles, who's been looking at gambling reduction in young people. We've got Amy, who's been looking at employment opportunities for people living with learning disabilities. We've got Joanna, who's been looking at the rights of immigrants in the UK and looking at storytelling between immigrants and citizens of the UK. We've got Echo with us, who's been looking at conversations around death and learning about death in Chinese families. We've got Julia, who's been working in Sicily on reigniting people's sort of emotional relationship with the natural world, as you can see from her backdrop, surrounded by plants. We've got Haneen with us, who's been working on a new curriculum in Saudi Arabia, bringing in the sort of principles of social design into a graphic design dialogue. We've got Taka with us, who's been doing work in China looking at stress reduction and reducing anxiety for young employees in their first few years of employment. We've got Pipi, who you can see is surrounded by bread. Bread is the passion, who's been looking at kind of how bread making and bread sharing can be part of community resilience and community building. And finally, we've got Joey with us, who's been working with young people on looking at how sort of systemic education and sustainable education can be much more part of their learning. And she's been building a new program all around that. So an amazing bunch, an incredibly inspiring bunch of young people who've been working in incredibly difficult circumstances over the past few months. I couldn't really be prouder of the work that they've created. So I wanted to ask the question to the students, really, if any of you have got, oh sorry, we've got Chin too, I didn't notice you there. Chin's been working on with the game industry to look at sort of practices of sustainability in gaming. So it's such a mixture of skills and talents and interests, but together we're hoping that this cohort together creates a really unified vision for some possible, some optimistic, some hopeful futures. I wanted to ask the students then, just if any of you want to share a few words about the experience of being on this course or where you're at now, and to reflect on any of the sort of learning as you come to quite an important, I guess, moment in your own experience. Does anyone want to share a few words? Put you on the spot.
I'll go.
Thanks.
I think it's just it's been an insane journey that you can't really comprehend. And if you told me at the beginning where I'd be now, I would just kind of be like, how did I get there? But I think it's been more about what we've been, like we were talking about identity, and I think it's taught me more about myself and how I learn and what I do best, and what areas that I'm really passionate about, and to be brave and confident in what I do. I think is like one of the biggest learnings of like how nervous I was at the beginning. Like I remember before I started, I was like, I don't have a reusable bottle, I need a reusable bottle, but it really didn't matter. But like that's kind of like this, like where I was at the beginning, whereas now like I'm more about that big picture thinking, but also just like the community that we've created even in COVID has been really interesting, and like how we've all went on our own journeys as well has been really interesting to see. So yeah, I think identity has been like a really key part in everyone's journey on the course, and how you are going to have an impact on the world is kind of where we're at.
Yeah, thanks, Joey. It's really, I think you're right. Like I've been thinking a lot about that sense of identity too, in terms of what this actually is as an experience. It's quite hard to put into words, but thank you so much for sharing that. There's some really exciting futures ahead for all of you. Does anyone else want to share a few words about where their brain's at the moment? It can be good, bad and ugly.
Yeah, I can say something. I think the one thing that just keeps repeating to me is just how well we adapted. Suddenly, being able to being in class, going into class, and then suddenly having this aggressive change. And I think it was really, really difficult around April to summertime, where we had to get all our projects ready, just for that, because that was a headache. But congratulate everyone, well done. But yeah, I think our strength is that we are able to adapt in these uncertain times at the moment. So I think, yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Miles. Absolutely right, spot on. Like, yeah, the rapidness of the adaptability was phenomenal, really. And hats off to everyone for still being here. It's quite impressive. Does anyone else want to share a few words? Or do we have any questions from the audience? Please do feel free to ask them in the chat or the Q&A. Lovely. We've got a question here for myself and Anna. Do you think you can see a theme or trend in the focus of graduate works over the years? It's a really, really interesting question. This is because this is our first year. We're like incredibly responsive, I guess, to the students that come with us on the journey, and also, I guess, the immediate context that we find ourselves in the world. So I think there is no there's no dominant trends at the moment. I think what this course will hopefully become over the next few years is quite an interesting kind of changing, generative, I don't know what the word is, experimental space for those things to be explored, depending on who comes into the course, what's happening in the world at that moment, what the passions are, what the interests are. And I think it's all up for grabs. And I think, not speak for you, Anna, but it's also just an enormous learning experience for us, so that the curriculum is incredibly responsive to the complexity of the sort of world that we find ourselves inhabiting. I don't know, Anna, if you've got any more reflections on that.
No, I think I totally agree. I think one thing that I what also in regards to what Joey said, I think it is really maybe one trend that I see is like people really finding a voice in their work, and you know, not in a self-absorbed or solipsistic way, but in a very kind of, you know, you can still have a voice but do something in the that makes a difference in the world, and it doesn't need to be just about yourself, but it can be about you and your wider context and about your community and about your culture. And I think that is perhaps something that we seek and encourage, and I think is so exciting to see in everyone.
Definitely. I guess question to the students then, like how you know, what's the difference between when you came in to this course 15 months ago to where you're at now in terms of what you thought this would be about for you? Because I think that change is quite interesting for us to sort of explore and to understand. Does anyone have any thoughts on that or can speak to that?
I can go. I feel like I've had more of a drastic change than some of the other classmates, because I didn't really have a very specific idea of the industry that I was entering into, and I didn't really have something specific that I wanted to get out of the course. So I just had a general idea of, I want to learn more about researching, or I want to learn more about what kind of context I want to put behind my design. But I didn't really know exactly what that was. But now, after just, you know, a year and a couple months, I'm actually working with an amazing charity design firm called Shift, and all the research that I've done within food industry, it's coming alive, and it's kind of like balancing between all the research that I've done and then doing some making and visualizing, which are completely two different kinds of brains that we have to be able to wield. And I think the course has prepared me exactly for where I'm supposed to be. And I have been talking to a couple of people within the design firm, and they told me about how when they were looking for different kinds of designers, they chose me because of the fact that I could see more of the systemic influences within food. So not just about what's trendy, not just about what looks good, what drives the consumer's behaviors, but also understanding the complexities within this one industry that I'm really diving into. So I think that really was like the biggest change for me, was like me being completely clueless when I first started and didn't even know like the word sustainability and what that really entailed. And now being really diving into this really wonderful charity and working with people who are just really like smart and intimidating and amazing. So yeah, I feel like that's the biggest difference from then and now.
Thanks, Rebecca. Don't be intimidated by them. They should be intimidated by you. It's fantastic to hear. And there's lots of stories now coming from all of you about what you're looking to do next. And for me, I think that's one of the most exciting things really is how do you now put this into practice? Like, what does this mean for your futures? And as we've said quite a lot on this course, this is not a sort of, there's no job called social innovation and sustainable futures. It doesn't exist. So this course is all about you trying to, as Anna said, trying to define and find that identity as a practitioner in this space for yourself. And those opportunities are in lots of ways going to have to be something that you carve out and that you spot and that you design for yourselves, which I think is both exciting and enormously overwhelming, I'm sure. But I know all of you have got some really exciting next steps ahead. We've got a question here from Tara. How has the course helped you frame your understanding of the future? So yeah, so I can ask that question openly. I can pick someone. Does anyone have any thoughts about that? How has it helped you frame your understanding of the future?
Can I go again or not?
Of course you can.
So me and Pete are running another co-design workshop around sustainable futures tomorrow. And I think my perspective on the future is like way more complex than it was before. And I remember Naomi saying, you're going to come out of this with more questions than you came in with. And we were all a bit like, oh no. But I definitely think when it comes to futures, it has. I guess we've researched more about like what a future entails and like how can we envision the future. I think I have a much more positive and optimistic outlook. I don't deny the facts that we're treated with, but I think that one of the things that might be missing in the environmental and social atmosphere is kind of that positivity and that we can make positive change. And so I've kind of since I came to that realization, I've really tried to imprint that in whatever projects that I do, like kind of look at the positives to make people change rather than the negatives. So I guess on like a macro scale, there's a lot of questions around what the future is, but whatever I do, I try and keep the positivity and the optimism about the future, because that I feel like that way is a much more motivating way to get people to change rather than showing a really apocalyptic world that we might live in. I don't know, I guess with my own future, like that's just ever expanding because of the course. So like there's just more opportunities by doing the course, but also like, yeah, I've developed my identity so like I can kind of steer my own future, whereas I guess before I didn't know how I was going to get there.
Thanks so much, Joey. Do you want to say a few words about your session as well tomorrow, because it fits with that sense of the future is bright?
Yeah, so one of our units was around co-designing sustainable futures, and I worked with someone called Pete that's on the course as well, and we've kept this going since we ran the unit, and it's based on a little UK seaside town called Morsey. It used to be in the centre of the UK, but we got flooded. But it kind of shows a world in which what we call is surviving and thriving. So we overcame a lot of the climate change out of COVID, and so we created this kind of world to map out that we already have a lot of the resources available to make a better world, and how that world would look at. So tomorrow it's kind of an ideas come along and kind of workshops and kind of weird and funny scenarios. We work with a lot of comedians, and we have a few videos that we've created. So it's just kind of a place to come along and kind of explore this positive environmental future that we could have. So yeah, come along and get involved.
Thanks so much, Joey. It's going to be exciting for sure. We've got a question here from Tom, the question is around this kind of concept of sustainability. So it's a word that's become very popular in public discourse over recent years. Do you as a group of students feel that you have gained insights that enable you to lead these conversations or these discussions, to drive them forward in slightly new directions? And do you have examples of that? So this sort of interrogation of the concept of sustainability. Does anyone have any reflections on that? I'm tempted to put Julia on the spot, sorry, just because your work is so connected to that idea, surrounded by pot plants. Yeah, sorry, Julia. But if anyone else has thoughts, is that okay, Julia?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, sustainability is a big word, and I thought when I started that like to gain a framework of words and rules to fix the word, and then I found out that is actually not that easy, and that is still work in progress. So what, like, the most important thing that I understood from all that is that we are all building our way, our personalized way to fix a specific part of the word. And I feel like this is the most important thing, like to all of us do our part, and like no one is too small to make the difference. And it's okay not to be like perfect in each aspect. And like I remember in the first, like as Joy said, the first months I was so anxious about sustainability, and like the word is dying, but so what can I do? I'm not gonna do anything. I just stop here. Whereas actually we need to find our spot, our like yeah, the field in which we feel that passion, and we know that we can make the difference because someone else is thinking to something else, and we all together we will work for a better future. So yeah, this is what I was thinking about.
Thank you so much, Julia. It's a really important part of the course, I think, is to have that discussion about what are the different words, what's the different language, what are the words that don't exist yet that need to, because they're not sufficient. And I think what I've learned a lot from you, Julia, is just like embracing the sort of poetry and the artistry of this subject, and to bring that in with full kind of emotional confidence. So it'd be really lovely to see where you go next from there with your kind of ideas. We've got a nice question here from a student who's in your footsteps, who's asking you all a question about what the sort of most challenging part of the last 15 months has been for you, and how did you overcome that challenge? There's been a few, but I don't know who wants to talk to that. Who would like to share a few words? Go on, Joanna, thank you.
So I think for me personally was understanding that whatever I was doing was enough. So when we think about change making and sustainability and meeting a goal, I never felt what I was doing was enough. So overcoming that was like a very big step in my process, and understanding that all the challenges that the world is facing are complex problems, but if you do a little bit and you do it well and you do it with passion, that will be enough, and that will be and contribute towards change. So I think for me, that was the biggest challenge. And then this course helped me to understand that as well. Yeah, really wise point. Yeah, a really prevalent sort of question for everyone. What is and what is ever enough? A really wise point, Joanna. Thank you. Do any of the other students have reflections on that related to the sort of ups and downs, challenges?
I can go again. I feel like this might sound like I'm kissing your ass or something, but like I feel like Ella has just been such a big part of me staying sane throughout the whole journey. And it's not like me throwing compliments, it's like a genuine profession. It's like, I think whenever I doubted myself, whatever, I felt like this direction isn't right, or am I doing enough, or is this enough of an impact, or like whatever doubts that you come along, and if you lose motivation, if you don't have anyone else to bounce ideas off of, because we usually had a lot of stimulation every day when we're going to class, but when you're stuck in a room and you don't have as much when you're doing virtually, that was like the biggest part for me, where I lost all the motivation, and I felt like, what was the whole point of finishing this degree if it's not worth it, if I'm not going to create impact that I was dreaming of. But I think talking to Ella, I think helped so much. Whenever I just felt like whenever I couldn't communicate with my family, whenever I felt like my contributors weren't doing as much as I wanted them to, like all the frustrations, I think when I talk to you, it's just kind of like, oh wait, I can do it this way actually. Or, you know, like, let's just, even if they're not answering, I'm just gonna do it anyway and then see what happens. So it was just like, maybe just, you know, go along with it and push the anxiety aside and just like do it. And I think when we needed it, you were there to be like, you know what, it's not as big of a deal than you think it is. Or actually this little thing that you thought passed off of, that's actually something that was a really big nugget that you could, you know, grab onto and dig into. So I think you just had like a really keen eye on where we were mentally and professionally, and you were there to, you just like knew where everyone was all the time. So I would say you were like the biggest ground holder throughout the whole MA, and you know, all of us, I think all the challenges all of us went through, it wouldn't have been bearable without you.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's a really beautiful thing to say. Yeah, I mean, I've got the easiest job in the world working with you lot. You're an absolute joy, and I feel very privileged. So thank you for saying that. But I think you guys have had the challenges. It's very easy for me to sit at the other side of a room, say, believe in yourselves. But all of you have proved something to yourself, which is incredibly powerful. But thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate that a lot. There's a question here, a final question, I think, and I'm going to ask it to all of you just to share a few words in response to this, because I think it's powerful for us all to think in these terms. But what advice would you give to your younger self when you look at where you are now? So I'm going to go round each of you and just ask you to share a few words as a final question. So I'll start, if it's okay, with Amy.
Advice to my younger self.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can you come back to me?
Of course, don't worry, no pressure, no pressure. Benali.
This is hard, but I think I would tell myself that you sometimes just have to kind of go for it, because I struggle with this idea of perfection so much that it stops me from doing a lot of things. But I think being on the course has kind of like taught me to just do it and like reflect back on rather than the other way around, because that just prevents you from doing anything. So yeah, that is what I would say to myself.
Kate.
Well, I've seen this question and I've been thinking about it, and I think that I would say to myself to actually trust myself and do what I think I should, because many times I found myself doing things that I thought that are expected of me, but weren't serving that much of a purpose for my projects. So yeah, that would be the first thing I would say to myself, to trust myself and do what I think I should do and not what I think other people think that I should do, if that makes any sense. And yeah, also to relax. I think you've all said something about this, and I know I have struggled with perfectionism too. So yeah, just to relax and to trust myself and enjoy. I think that's the most important, because many times I've been so stressed that I've forgotten to enjoy the process. So yeah, that would be the advice. Do enjoy it. Do enjoy the process.
Thank you, Kate. Very wise. Joanna.
I think I would say to my younger self to kind of enjoy the moment and everything I'm seeing and living, even though it's so different from the Western world, because that contributed to me practicing basically radical empathy. And like empathy has allowed me to want to change and change the world and for the better.
Thank you, Joanna. Echo.
I would say that just be brave and try to like step out of your comfort zone and try new stuff, and always be curious about the new stuff in the world. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Echo. Julia.
I would say that societal change takes time, and it's okay, but this doesn't mean that it's not happening. So I look at this course, I mean, it is happening now. And that's why we, as change makers, we don't have to feel discouraged, and we need to keep going, because change is happening, and it's amazing actually when we notice it.
Thank you so much. Anine?
Yeah, I think what changed really in my mind, because as a graphic designer, like I can tell myself that having a purpose and whatever projects I'm working on, it will change like the way I look to the work I did as a graphic designer.
Thank you very much. Tucker?
Yeah, I would like to say to younger myself, be confident and be yourself. Don't worry about too much and just go forward, because relax and enjoy the journey is the most important. Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. Wise words. Joey?
I guess I have two that kind of clash against each other, but I think that's the ness of this course, is kind of like just do it. Because I've got so much out over the course and doing the masters, and people really doubted doing this masters. Like, you're doing a masters and you don't really know what's on it, because there was no really curriculum at like when I applied. But also just keep doing it through the whole course, apply for everything. But then in the counter of it is like, give yourself a break, because you need those quiet moments to reflect on everything you've done. And so you need to kind of get that balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. A lesson I think we've all learned over the last few months. Ching?
Yeah, okay. My suggestion is to look at a problem from multiple perspectives, such as like the climate change is not only an environmental problem, but also a social problem, a political problem, or historical problem, and even feminism. But our ability is as a designer is limited. So when we look at this problem, we can more accurately list the relevant stakeholders of a problem if we have multiple perspectives, and then find one that we are interested in or most needed to solve, to study and do the research. And finally, like our teachers, tutors said, so who can really do the real social impact? But the most two important role is the government and the enterprise. But as a designer, so it's good to influence the enterprise and the government and as a social designers, and or to expose the problem, not only just to solve it, because it's hard to solve it. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks so much, Jin. Amazing. Rebecca?
I would tell my younger self to do both, I suppose, like Joey said, to be able to attach myself into someone and really understand from their perspective, but also be able to detach myself from certain subjects, because it can be overwhelming. So to kind of see the detailed and the bigger version at the same time, I think is like the biggest skill that I could give myself. Yeah, if that makes sense.
No, it does, perfect sense. And Amy?
Yeah, I think I'd tell myself to just go for it and stop hesitating, because I think I find that I'd waste a lot of time like worrying and thinking about like what could happen or what could go wrong and stuff, and then like regretting it in the end, thinking like, oh, I could have been using that time to do the thing in the first place. So yeah, I think it's better.
Lovely. Less worrying, more joy. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, students, from the bottom of my heart for all of your work, not just today, but over the past 15 months. It's been genuinely an absolute pleasure to work with you and to get to know you over this time. I hope everyone who's listened to the session today can have a little look and engage in the work that the students have been doing over the past few months. What I'll do now, just in the chat, is I'll just pop links to the events that the students are going to be running over the next few days. If you don't have those, then yeah, please do take a peek into those events, and I'll share a little I'll share a little link to where you can find out some more information too. But yeah, finally, thank you everyone for being here and being part of this and asking such good questions. We hope you can all stay connected to the course. And yeah, hopefully if the future's in the hands of these incredible people, we're all good. My final words. So thank you everyone so much.